Hello everyone, my name is Kitty and I'm here today to share with you how I made this red jumpsuit, which is of course inspired by the ones the workers wear in the recent TV show Squid Game. And I have put my pattern up in my Etsy shop if you would like to download it and perhaps make a jumpsuit like this for yourself. And I have made another video where I show how I made the dress that the doll wears, so definitely stick around and check that out. But otherwise, I'm very excited to share my process, so let's get going. For materials for this project, I will be using 4 meters of red polyester Bi-Strech fabric, thread, 1 meter of 3 centimeter wide elastic, and a 60 centimeter long zipper. Now I bought my zipper at the dollar store, so unfortunately it does separate, but I do recommend you getting a non-separating zipper. Go ahead and print out the pattern. Make sure that the scale is set to 100% and print it on the correct size paper, A4 or US letter. After printing, you can check the measurements of the little square in the top left corner and then start assembling it into a grid. Now this grid is going to be 64 pages total, so that is 8 pages across and 8 pages down. After you assemble the grid, you can cut the pattern out to the size you want. I will be cutting my pattern on the size large because I'm actually making this jumpsuit for somebody else to wear on Halloween. Don't be fooled, I am wearing it in the reveal footage, but I'm making it more for their measurements. I have their measurements in mind when I'm cutting this out. Now this pattern comes in 3 sizes, small, medium, and large, but I quickly want to show an easy way to make the pattern larger or smaller. First, cut the pattern vertically down the center. Next, spread the pattern apart by how much you want to enlarge it. For example, if you want to enlarge it by 3 inches, spread all 3 of the pattern pieces equally apart by 3 inches. Now all that's left to do is redraw the lines, essentially connecting the dots. And this is how you will enlarge the pattern. You of course could do the reverse and shrink it as well. Okay, now it is time to start cutting my pieces out. I first open up my fabric to the full width, and then I stack 2 layers, making sure that it's completely opened up. I lie my pattern pieces down, and then I cut out my jumpsuit body, sleeves, pocket pieces, and belt loops. But I stop and rearrange my fabric, fold it so that I can cut my hood out on a fold. And here are all of my pieces cut out. I have 2 of the jumpsuit body, 2 sleeves, 3 pockets, 6 pocket flaps, and instead of 2, I cut 4 belt loops, and my hood, which is cut on the fold. Now before we assemble the jumpsuit, we want to go ahead and get the pocket flaps, and belt loops ready. So first, I take my pocket pieces and I mark those 2 folds on the pattern. This is where I'm going to fold it the first time by about 1 centimeter, and then the second time by about 2 centimeters. This will create a nice, clean, finished top edge for the pocket. So again, I'm just going to fold that top edge over 2 times, and then I'm going to press those folds in with an iron, and finally I can top stitch them down to secure them in place. Next, we're going to work on the belt loops. Fold your belt loop in half vertically, match the 2 side edges together, pin them in place, and then you can stitch along that edge. Again, I've decided to make 4 belt loops instead of the 2, and you as well could opt for 2 additional belt loops. After stitching the side edges together, you can turn the belt loop right side out and then press it nice and flat with an iron, putting that seam on the back side of the belt loop. Next is making the 3 pocket flaps. First, match the right sides together of your pocket flaps. Pin the 2 pieces together and then stitch around 3 of the edges. You will be stitching around the side, bottom, and other side edge. After stitching the 2 pieces together, you can clip the corners on the seam allowance. This will make turning it easier. And then you can turn it right side out. Afterwards, you can press the edges with an iron for a nice, crisp finish. After giving my 3 pocket flaps a good press, I've decided that I would like to top stitch around all 3 edges. After adding the top stitching, I've decided to add a buttonhole to the center of my pocket flap. I just followed the buttonhole method for my machine, which may vary depending on your machine. You can also opt for snaps, to sew the button on decoratively, or to forego the addition of a button altogether. But what I do is I just mark where I would like to place the buttonhole and then just follow the steps for my machine. After sewing in the buttonhole, I cut it open with my seam ripper and scissors. Returning to the pocket, you can see we have already done fold 1 and fold 2, which are marked on the pattern. We are now going to fold the side and bottom edges inward by 1 centimeter. This is marked as fold 3 on the pattern. So working on the sides and bottom edge of the pocket, I fold them all in by about 1 centimeter, and I use pins to secure them in place as I go, taking extra care on the corners. After all the edges on all 3 of my pockets have been folded in, I take it to the ironing board and press those edges down. You should now have your pockets, pocket flaps, and belt loops ready to be added to the jumpsuit. First, I mark on my jumpsuit where I would like the placement of everything to be. The pattern will have placement suggestions. I use pins and a marker to mark where I want everything to be, and I use pins to pin through both layers of the fabric, and then I flip it over and mark where I want it to be. That way I know everything is symmetrical. After marking the placement of where I want everything to be, I lay my pockets and belt loops on the right side of my jumpsuit and pin them in place. I take extra care with the pockets, making sure I'm keeping the raw edges folded inwards. I then repeat this for the other side of my jumpsuit, making sure the hip pockets and belt loops are symmetrical, but only one side is going to have a top pocket. We can now top stitch everything in place on the jumpsuit. First, I top stitch around 3 edges of the pocket, making sure when I reach corners I keep the needle down and then lift up the foot and pivot my fabric around so that the corners on the pocket are nice and sharp. Now the belt loop I have pinned facing up. First, I top stitch one end down, and then I fold the belt loop over on that seam, and I stitch it again, straight across but a little bit below the previous seam. This is in order to cover that raw edge. For the other side of the belt loop, you can fold the raw edge under and then stitch it down in place. Now the pocket flap I have placed about 1 to 1.5 centimeters above the top edge of the pocket. The pocket flap is pinned upwards, pointing to the neckline of the jumpsuit. First, I stitch across the raw edge, sewing the pocket flap to the jumpsuit. Then I fold it over on the seam and top stitch it again. The second row of stitching is just below the first row of stitching. This is in order to cover that raw edge. Here you can see it all in one go as I sew it across that bottom edge of the pocket flap, fold it over on that seam, and top stitch it one more time. With everything top stitched to the outside of the jumpsuit, we can now start putting it together. First, fold your jumpsuit in half vertically down the center and match the crotch point and the leg edges together. After matching everything neatly, you can pin these edges together and repeat for the other jumpsuit body piece. Next, you can stitch the sides of the legs together. After stitching the sides of the legs together, you can turn one of the jumpsuit pieces right side out. You are then going to insert that right side out jumpsuit body piece into the leg of the wrong side out jumpsuit body piece. You're going to match the leg seams together and work your way up until you match the crotch points together. And now you should have right sides touching of both of the jumpsuit body pieces. Here you can see on both of the jumpsuit pieces that the crotch points and leg seams are matching together and that right sides are touching. Now at this point, you basically have one jumpsuit piece inside the other. We are next going to create the seam that starts at the back neck of the jumpsuit, goes down the back of the body, around the crotch, and goes up partially the center front of the jumpsuit. We don't want the seam to go all the way up the front of the jumpsuit since we want to leave some room for the zipper. So first, on the center front edge of the jumpsuit, mark where you want your zipper to end. I have indicated where I want my zipper to end with a pin. Next, match these center front edges and center back edges together and pin them in place. You can check on the pattern. I have indicated which side is the center front and which side is the center back. Do take time and check and work carefully as you create this very unique kind of U or J-shaped seam. I think here you can see what it should look like once you have those edges pinned together. I have my back edges pinned together, I've matched the leg seams together, pinned partially up the front, and left some room so that I can insert my zipper later. Afterwards, you can take it to the machine and stitch this seam together, and I like to finish it with a nice zigzag stitch. Now I'm going to finish the bottom edges of my legs and add elastic. So first I fold that bottom edge up by about 1 centimeter and I top stitch it down. After that first fold has been stitched into place, I fold it again, this time by about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. I make sure that it is plenty roomy so that I can insert my elastic. And then I stitch this fold in place. But I make sure that I don't stitch it completely closed and I leave a small gap so that I can insert my elastic. I then cut the elastic so that it would comfortably fit around my ankle and put it on a safety pin and pull it through that channel that I've made on the bottom of the leg. After the elastic has been fed through the channel, I take both ends of the elastic band, lay one on top of the other, and then securely stitch them together. Now all that's left to do is wiggle that elastic into the channel and top stitch that little gap I left open shut. And you should have a completed bottom cuff to your pant leg. All you have to do is repeat it for the other pant leg. Now let's make the sleeves for the jumpsuit. Take your sleeves and fold them in half vertically, making sure that right sides are touching. You can then match the side edges together and pin them in place. After pinning, you can sew the sides together. After the sides of your sleeve have been sewn together, we can now finish that bottom edge much in the same way we did the pant leg. First, fold that bottom raw edge up by about a centimeter and top stitch it down. Then you can fold it up one more time, this time by about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, and you're going to top stitch this edge down as well, making sure that you have plenty of room for your elastic band and that you leave a small gap unstitched. That way we can insert the elastic. Next, cut your elastic to size so that it will fit comfortably around your wrist, and then put one side on a safety pin and feed it through the channel we created. After feeding it through the channel, take both ends of the elastic band and lay one side on top of the other and stitch the elastic band edges together. Now you can wiggle that continuous loop of elastic band back into the channel and top stitch that little gap we left open shut, and you will have a finished cuff for your sleeve. Now let's insert the sleeves into the armhole of the jumpsuit. Have your jumpsuit wrong side out and turn your sleeve right side out. You can now lay the sleeve inside of the jumpsuit and match the sleeve edges to the armhole edges of the jumpsuit. You can match the notches indicated in the pattern. Start by finding the deepest part of the V-shaped cutout on the jumpsuit body and match it to the side seam of the sleeve. You can work up from this point, matching these edges until you reach the neckline of the jumpsuit. Repeat for the other sleeve on the other side of the jumpsuit, and take care making sure that you have the sleeve on the right side of the jumpsuit. After pinning your sleeves into the armhole of the jumpsuit, you can stitch them in, and I like to finish this seam with a zigzag stitch. And here you can see how I've matched the side seam of my sleeve to the deepest point of that V cutout. And next, let's add the hood to the neckline of the jumpsuit. Now your hood should just be one piece that has been cut on the fold. That is so the hood is lined. You can now fold your hood in half along that center fold mark indicated on the pattern, and then next you're going to stitch all 4 layers of that rounded U-shaped edge together. After stitching all 4 layers together, you can turn it right side out, and then you're going to match that notched edge to the neckline of your jumpsuit. Pin as needed, and then you're going to stitch these edges together. Now the edges of your jumpsuit will be a tiny bit longer than the hood, and that is so that you have room to insert the zipper. And if you like, this is also a great time to add some top stitching to the outer edge of your hood if you would like to secure the lining to the outer layer. Now it's time to insert my zipper into my jumpsuit. I first zigzag stitch the center front edges where I will be adding my zipper. I then fold back those edges about 1 centimeter and stitch my zipper into place. I am trying to leave my zipper a little bit exposed like the ones in the show. And I do recommend checking out other zipper tutorials because there are a lot of great ones that go into a lot of detail on YouTube. And for the final touch for my jumpsuit, I just hand sew 3 buttons for the pockets into place. And I thought I would mention how I threw together my mask. I first wrapped a bowl in saran wrap, and then I did 2 to 3 layers of paper mache using my pattern paper scraps. I did a final layer of paper mache using paper towel for the texture, and then I painted it black with acrylic paint. I next hot glued some cardboard strips to make edges, and I hot glued an elastic band to the inside so I could wear it. Finally, I painted a white triangle on the front using acrylic paint. And that was just my quick and easy way to make a mask using things I had around the house. And now let's see how the whole thing came together. And thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video and would like to see other fun DIY videos, please like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.